Jane Parker was born in the family home in Morley, St. Botolph, Norfolk, in England. Her exact date of birth is not known. Jane Parker's father was Henry Parker, the 10th Baron Morley, and her mother was Alice St. John, the eldest daughter of Sir John St. John, and his wife Alice Bradshaw. Jane was in fact a half-second cousin to Henry VIII. She would also marry George Boleyn. There would be no children. Jane's education would have consisted of being taught to read and write, household accounting, music and dance lessons, needlework, and about herbal medicines. Her education would have been one befitting her needs to run a home, and her husband's estates, particularly in his absence. Jane's education would have continued when she joined the royal court, in her early teens, and joined the household of the then Queen, Catherine of Aragon. Jane Parker would have been expected to make a very good marriage. There has been speculation, as there are no portraits in existence of Jane, that perhaps her looks were not that pleasing to the eye, but it has also been speculated upon, that due to her participation in leading roles within theatrical productions meant only for lasses very pleasing to the eye, that in fact, Jane was a beautiful woman. Her marriage was arranged, and took place in either 1524, or early in 1525, to George Boleyn, Viscount Rochford. A woman's role in this era was purely to marry well, and produce as many children as they were able. The infant mortality rate in this time was very high. Jane's marriage to George was a suitable one. The Boleyns, at this point, were very close to King Henry VIII. Her relationship with her soon-to-be sisters-in-law, at this point was not smooth, although there is actually no evidence of this. Jane's marriage would also, in time to come, make her sister-in-law to the Queen Consort, as well as an aunt to the future Queen of England, Princess Elizabeth. There are conflicting versions of whether or not her marriage was a happy one, but what is known, was that there were no issue. Jane and George had 11 years of marriage that would tragically end at the scaffold, ultimately, for them both. In 1536, George Boleyn was arrested on the charges of incest and treason with his own sister, and several others. His wife Jane was called to give evidence, and although her reasons for doing so are still unclear, her testimony confirmed the unnatural relationship between brother and sister. Some believe it was due to her jealousy of the relationship between them. Anne was very beautiful and was very close to her brother. Regardless of the truth, Jane Boleyn would ultimately be the cause of the downfall of the Boleyn family, and all that they had built, and achieved, over 4 generations, and without issue herself, there was no heir to inherit after George. Life for Jane was difficult, both financially, and socially. After the death of her husband, money from his family would be settled upon her to keep her as she was accustomed, but she would be absent from court for many months. Upon her return to court, she would become lady-in-waiting to Queen Jane Seymour. After her death in childbearing, she would become associated with the new Queen, Anne of Cleves. Having been confided in by Anne, Jane was able to testify that the marriage between Anne and the king had remained unconsummated. The king then married his teenage bride, Catherine Howard. It would be this marriage that would see to Jane's own downfall. Jane would become one of Catherine's favourites, and in so doing, was easily influenced by her. It would be Jane that assisted the Queen, grown bored with her aging husband, to become intimately acquainted with Thomas Culpeper, a handsome courtier. The affair came to light as a result of the Queen's past being investigated, and her very inappropriate behaviour was uncovered. Jane's name was mentioned in a love letter between Catherine and Culpeper, as a party to their affair. She was arrested, and imprisoned, in the Tower of London. She would ultimately be found guilty of her crimes, and sentenced to death. On February 13, 1542, directly after Catherine Howard's execution, Jane Boleyn was beheaded. Her body was laid to rest in the Tower grounds, next to that of Catherine Howard, and close to the body of her husband, George, and sister-in-law, Anne Boleyn.